Welcome back, and what a delight to have with us today our good friend Scott Jorgensen. He is a staffer, legislative staffer up at the Oregon State Capitol. He's also a former reporter and, of course, an author, and we're here to talk to him about the current short session that the Oregon legislature is currently involved in. Hi, Scott. Good to see you, friend.
Good to be here.
So you're in the middle of it. How long is this going to go?
Well, all through the month of February and probably the first week of March as well.
Okay, well, this was supposed to be somewhat of a budgetary adjustment session and maybe fixing some loose ends. Instead, there seems to be some major items on the table. Can you tell us what's up?
So the reason we have the short sessions is because voters approved a ballot measure back in 2010 where the legislature posed the question to voters, do you want us to do short sessions? And the promise at the time was that it would be for budgetary adjustments, technical fixes, and things like that. Some of the folks in the building thought that, they had some reservations and said, well, what if people attempt to politicize it? The fact that it's in an election year means that there are a lot of votes that are taken for the sake of making people vote for or against something so you can use it as campaign fodder. So it gets unnecessarily politicized. And we also have a lot of critical issues that are going to affect every man, woman, and child in this state, major policy proposals that are going to be decided in the space of a few short weeks. And part of what that does is it limits public participation, especially for people down in Southern Oregon and other rural parts of the state, because you have shortened notices for when meetings are going to happen and what's going to be discussed. And it definitely slants things in favor of political insiders up here in Salem and keeps guys from Medford from being able to come up and testify in a timely fashion on things that affect them.
Wow. All right, so where is the minimum wage?
We've got a few different proposals, and that's one of the big themes of this session, is that there are a lot of issues that will be either decided here over the next few weeks or in November at the ballot box. And there are a lot of different liberal activist groups that have petitions being circulated all over the state right now. Minimum wage is one of those issues. So there are a few different proposals. One of them is Senate Bill 1532. And what this does is it establishes a tiered system for the minimum wage based on the size and geographic location of an employer. So, right now we have one minimum wage throughout the entire state. This would do almost more of regional minimum wages. One of my friends is a mayor down in a small town in Southern Oregon, and he said that he's already hearing from constituents who are concerned about this. He said, okay, well, if I'm doing this job over here in Coquille, how is it that somebody doing the same job in Portland, that their labor is somehow worth so much more? So that's one of the issues that brings that up. We have a report that we've gotten from an economist that talks about how even within the city of Portland, you have huge disparities between the west and east side over there on the Willamette River, that the rents are a lot higher, the cost is a lot higher to live on the west side of Portland, and as you get further out east, the costs drop. So that's one of the things that when we're talking about this issue and framing it, you say, okay, well, if you're going to do different minimum wages throughout the state due to cost of living, being different in places, why wouldn't you do the same thing in the city of Portland? Well, because it would be an accounting nightmare for businesses, for one.
Well, I would assume, Scott, that given a liberal governor and pretty much a liberal-controlled Senate and House, some kind of minimum wage legislation is going to come out of this, whether it's on size of community or company. I've also heard there's just a flat increment raise over the next 3 years, which would be a whole lot more simpler than what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, we're going to see something, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. There's Senate Bill 1592, and that takes the approach you just mentioned, where it increases the minimum wage in graduated steps to $13.50 an hour by 2019. And what all these proposals have in common is that they repeal the state preemption of local minimum wage requirements. So that's something else to watch out for. And then there's a House bill that's very similar to that, and that's House Bill 4054, similarly takes the incremental approach to raising the minimum wage.
Whenever it comes out, will it go to the people for ratification, or is it just going to become law?
It's just going to become law. In fact, I'm looking here. Let's see, 2 of the 3 bills, in fact, no, all of them have the famous emergency clause that would make it a lot more difficult to refer it to people.
Done any kind of impact study on what this may do? I mean, I can't help it. There's no incentive for a business to come to Oregon if this happens. Have they done any impact study on this?
Yes, and there has been an economic analysis. In fact, that's going to be included in the newsletter that I have to put out here in the next couple of hours. And one of the things it talks about is that you're limiting people's opportunity for advancement. And we have a lot of underemployment in this state, and our rate of teenage unemployment is actually higher than the national average. And I don't see this helping.
Yeah. The other thing was, in light of former Governor John Kitzhaber's scandal and resignation, out of this would come some kind of a ethics bill. I don't know what it looks like. Are you seeing or smelling anything along that lines?
We have a few different bills along those lines that have to do with ethics reform legislation. And one of them, Senator Alan Olson from Canby has been proposing this session after session for a while. You have amendments that are offered up to bills because you have this thing called the gut and stuff, where if you have the same relating to clause, you can delete the contents of a bill and then insert something completely different. But you have no way of knowing right now who did it. If it's another legislator, if it's a special interest group, there's no accountability for that. And they're trying to do that as part of the overall Senate rules, but we wanted to be able to put it in statute as well, because sometimes, especially in a politicized session like this, you put members in the position of voting against their own bill because it isn't even their own bill anymore. It's been kind of amended beyond recognition. Democratic Senator Betsy Johnson from the Northern Coast has a bill, Senate Bill 1577, that would establish a legislative committee on accountability. And that committee would have subpoena powers, which I think is one of the things that we need to bring the legislature back to being a co-equal branch of government, because it hasn't been for the longest time. My boss, Senator Doug Whitsett, has a bill, Senate Bill 1579, and this has to do with, we found a couple of different state agencies, including the Department of Energy and the Water Resources Department. Part of what enabled the business energy tax credit scandal to get out of line was that the Department of Energy was getting legal opinions, except they were claiming attorney-client privilege. And we say, okay, so you're a public agency getting a legal opinion from another public agency, and then we ask you about the contents of that legal opinion, and you say it's none of our business. So this would change that, and would require the state agencies to provide a summary of that legal advice regarding the validity or the effect of their proposed rules. And we've got a few more. There's Senate Joint Resolution 202 from Senator Fred Girod, and that would propose an amendment to the Constitution to require the legislature to approve administrative rules. That's another area where we've seen things get kind of out of line with the executive branch.
Do you think that'll see the light of day? I mean, we've been waiting for that one for a long time.
Oh, and similarly, Representative Sal Esquivel from Medford has a bill that does something similar that would provide the Legislative Assembly may require committees to review and approve administrative rules. So I think both of what these do, they are referrals. So if these pass through the process, these matters would then be thrown to the voters in November to decide.
All right, I got one other quick question before we go here. Is there any talk about what may or may not happen with the failed Oregon Health Plan / Obamacare portal failure and who's suing who? Is any of that being discussed up there?
I'm not hearing any of that discussion, but what I can tell you is that the 2017 session, there are a lot of state agencies whose budgets are in shambles right now. The Oregon Health Authority is one of them, because we did the Medicaid expansion under the Federal Affordable Care Act, and up until now, the feds have covered 100% of the cost of that, but they're going to start phasing back the percentage that they pay. So that's going to create a huge budget hole. Department of Human Services is underwater. the Oregon Department of Transportation, their budget's in shambles. So 2017 is going to be a painful session. And you also have these new union contracts that have been negotiated for state workers. So we're going to need billions upon billions of dollars come 2017. It's going to be ugly.
Oh, boy, that's good news. All right, well, listen, let's stay in touch. I know you'll be up there for a couple of weeks, and we'll connect several times along the way and get an update. Thanks, Scott, for checking in, and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yeah, I always appreciate the chance to tell people what's going on up here.
All right, thanks, buddy. God bless you. All right, we'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.